It got cut, or we didn't
There
press
we go.
stream?
Now it's back. Now it's on.
Was it not streaming?
I thought it was streaming, but
Now it's streaming?
now it's streaming.
Oh, God damn it. Really? We weren't streaming that whole thing?
Well, we're on.
We got to be checking on these streams,
We're
Christian.
on. We're on Facebook for sure.
Damn it. Damn it. Again? That's got to be your job now, dude. You got to check on that stream. You got to check on it. Okay. So people missed the whole layout of
Facebook is working.
Okay. Well, Facebook's good. The YouTube people missed the whole layout. Okay. So they can go check it out on Facebook. They can go check it out on what did you just do?
Oh.
What's going on, bro?
The fuck happened?
Click on the little icon of vMix down there. There you go. Is vMix closed? Don't reopen it. Just click on the icon. It should be down there. Is it down there?
Yeah, yeah.
Just click on it. There you
we
go.
go.
And give yourself, yeah, it looks like you closed your controller as well.
There we go. Got it.
There we go. All right. A lot of discombobulation here. Okay, so
Back on track.
Back on track. So what we're going to show then, dude, is, as I said, I'm going to show you the type of drone that I believe was being tested. I believe there were multiples of them. Go ahead and show this. It's called the TCAD. Go ahead and show this TCAD vid.
What if we
Where's the
told you
sound?
the future is now? Robots are replacing combat soldiers. Unnecessary casualties are becoming part of the past.
Go ahead and turn it up.
Minimizing collateral damage and uninvolved casualties. Duke Robotics presents TCAD, the future soldier. With TCAD, the future battlefield has arrived. A fully robotic battalion, capable of identification and surgical neutralization of hostiles in the field, can now be deployed to places human soldiers can't reach, or simply shouldn't have to go. TCAD is able to adjust for the right place and time. The TCAD robot is designed to identify, target, and engage in real-life scenarios. TCAD takes the full recoil of the weapon discharge, compensates for its force, and quickly readjusts to stay on target and in the fight. The Defense Department chose Duke as winner of the 2016 Terror Combat Competition. The company is in the process of implementing orders from Israeli forces. Every year in the U.S., more than $150 billion is spent in R&D and acquisition of better solutions to secure our troops. The total global aerial drone market by itself is expected to reach $10 billion in 2017. Over the next several years, the military robotic and drone sector will continue to lead all other sectors in drone spending. Invest in Duke Robotics. TCAD, the robot that will transform the way conflicts are being solved.
Wow.
So this is a perfect example of the type of drone that I believe that this thing was. So what do we have? Here's the situation that we've got. Lone wolf who dies. Supposedly he's got 8 to 10 weapons in his room. 2 shooting platforms, supposedly. How does he bust out a window? Does he drill a hole in a window? How does he shoot out of a window that doesn't open? Mandalay Bay's windows don't open. We have videos of that exact area where supposedly his room was. There are no muzzle flashes. Supposedly there are cameras that are set up. According to a tweet by Norm Clark, he's got cameras set up in his room to see the police coming. But they're clearly not set up in the hallway. We have a military facility associated with Janet Air, which is the government-run airline that takes people out to Area 51, a weapons testing range, fully secure, that is about the same distance on the opposite side of, so Mandalay Bay being north, Mandalay Bay being west, this being to the east, almost on the exact same line. We have a guy filming the stage that as soon as the shots go off, he turns his camera because he thinks that it's in the opposite direction of Mandalay Bay. So we have all of this going on, and we happen to have drones coming out that hold small arms and can do this. Now, if you were going to really test these in a live scenario, what you would want is you would want a bunch of people, and then you would want to pick out specific targets and see if these things could hit it. Furthermore, why Las Vegas would be the place to do this drone thing is because the drones are flown out on Nellis Air Force Base. That's where the drone squadron is that remotely flies all the drones. So you would want these things to be jacked into the existing systems. You would want it to be close enough. There's a great movie with Ethan Hawke where he's playing, it's relatively new, he's playing one of these drone pilots. You have all of these things lining up. The other thing is, this woman who was a person of interest, now is not a person of interest. When I saw her name, Mary Lou Danby, I immediately thought, Filipino.
Yeah.
She's got the Filipino name. Turns out she is Filipino. Danby is not a Filipino last name. And she's of a particular age. She was married to a military guy. Promise you. Promise. There's a military connection. And I would not be surprised if it's not Air Force. And she travels a lot. There's too many things lined up in this whole thing. And especially the fact that it's like very confusing about, he leaves no note, none of this, right? I do think this is the scenario. I do think that particular weapon system is exactly what they would want right now, because there's a lot of things about collateral damage and whatnot. They don't want to be firing these Hellfire missiles. The other thing about it is, this is the type of thing that you could use in a conflict with North Korea.
Right.
To take out their top guys, right? You smuggle it in, because it's pretty much man-portable. You saw it. It's not much bigger than the gun itself. You smuggle this thing in, and then you just set it somewhere. The guy can leave, and it's remotely piloted by satellite from here. All you got to do is drop it off, attach a weapon onto it, fucking put the ammunition, and woo, this thing's up, and brah,
it could probably even fly long distance, because I know when we were playing with some drones.
Oh,
here,
dude, yeah. I mean, I'm sure this thing's got some range on it.
Right.
I mean, it's probably got 20 miles or something like that. And it's like, it also is one of those where if the other side doesn't know that you have it operational, they're going to be looking for, because it was small arms fire coming from close, they're going to be looking for a shooter, an actual person. But there's not going to be a shooter there. This was a weapons test, period. Now we're going to see how it gets spun. We're going to see if they spin it into something completely different. But
yeah, right now they're saying ISIS took blame.
Yeah, but ISIS is going to take credit for everything, and we already know that ISIS isn't anything. See if you can get that. Click on Skype. See if you can get it to load back up on that side. And then we actually have. Now that we've done all that, I'll get for those YouTube people who just came in, I will get up the video. The full video, so that you can see my full breakdown on this. I'll actually put it as a whole separate piece so that you can see the whole section of this. Once again, we did not press the stream button for YouTube. We were getting crazy.
Yeah,
we only had about 3 minutes.
It was a little chaotic.
It was a little chaotic as we tried to get this story prepared. But luckily, it's been out, so we're good in that department. Let's go ahead. We're going to break from this for just a minute. We've got Ron Paul in our second hour. We're going to pull Kyle Mohney up from the Human Action Foundation, talk a little bit with him. Do you have him, Christian? Just go ahead and connect with him. And let's see what we can do. Why don't you go back to me, Christian? So we actually have two guests today. We've got Ron Paul in the second hour. And in this first hour, I wanted to bring on someone who I met when I was in New Hampshire. Obviously, we did not plan to have this Vegas news and this Vegas story come up. So this is kind of a non sequitur jumping to, but I think that this is a really interesting story. and wanted to talk to somebody from there before it got too far from being at Free Coast Fest. But I have Kyle Mohney from the Human Action Foundation. Christian, if you want to throw to him. Kyle Mohney is Director of Development and Ombudsman for the Human Action Foundation. The Human Action Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides educational, social, and charitable services to communities in which they operate. Their activities respond to the needs of those they serve, seeking to help them on their own chosen path of self-improvement. Human Action Foundation's present and future programs include providing materials and support for homeschooling families, aspiring entrepreneurs, and artists, hosting community events, providing educational seminars for children and adults, and organizing charitable efforts for those in need. Kyle Mohney, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, crazy day here in Vegas. Yeah, wow. Glad to have you on. And then we've got Ron Paul later on. So packed show. Very, very good show. First, I want to say I had a great time up in Portsmouth. Human Action Foundation, you guys really were the hosts and sponsors of the Free Coast Festival, which was fantastic. I had a wonderful time. Thank you guys for your hospitality. If you wouldn't mind, I mean, I know there's several of you associated with that group. I find it to be a very unique set of guys and also a unique group with a unique mission. Can you give us a little bit about your background? How did you find yourself in the Seacoast area? How did you wind up working with these guys? And tell us a little bit about the Human Action Foundation.
Sure. So, my name is Kyle Mohney, and I ended up moving to New Hampshire in 2014 along with my family. And we'd heard about the Free State Project, going back to, I think I found out about it in maybe 2010 or 2009, somewhere in there, Free Talk Live, things of that nature. So we visited New Hampshire, I think in 2010, and then decided, man, we need to start gearing ourselves to moving, to the Seacoast or somewhere in New Hampshire. We didn't really know where at the time, but we kept checking it out and geared ourselves up for moving, and finally made the plunge in 2014. So the Free State Project was really what got us there. But when we landed, we realized that there was distinct communities, distinct regions in New Hampshire, and the coast was just what fit for us. So we moved into Exeter, and then a year later bought a house in Hampton, kind of near the ocean. So yeah, it's a great community, and we just hit the ground running when we got there, and we haven't stopped since. So right after we got there, though, we found that there was this new community space coming up, and opened up in the summer of 2014, and had its unveiling in September of 2014 at the first Free Coast Festival. So you were at the fourth one.
Right.
And the Praxium was opened in September of 2014. And we just said that, wow, this is something really cool. We got to be part of this. So I became a member, and then a couple of years later, the Human Action Foundation was started as a nonprofit, a 501c3, and we took over running the Praxium. And so now I'm a board member, and it's really cool, the organization. We're really trying to provide opportunities to the Liberty community here to use the space in ways that they see fit, co-working, homeschooling. We've had potlucks, community events there. A couple blockchain startups have started there. Library and Storm City. Obviously, you've talked about that with Matt Carano in the past. So yeah, that's how I got engaged with the community, and it's been great ever since.
So, I mean, the Praxium is an interesting idea. Let's dig a little further into that. I know that you guys are actually working to do Praxium 2, and I know that you did some fundraising, and that has turned out very well for you guys to be able to do that. I like the idea of a space. I've done sort of a free space. I've done that myself. But it's different when you have a group of people. I think it's really interesting, and I want to dig into it. I don't want to I want to get as in depth on this idea as I possibly can. So if you could talk about sort of the community that's there, because it seems like there is a need within this community, and I think that a lot of people can relate. particularly when it comes to things like homeschooling, when it comes to having a community space for like-minded Liberty people to get together and whatnot. Can you talk, maybe we could start with the homeschooling community. Can you talk a little bit about how homeschooling or non-schooling or unschooling, how that's working out within that community, and then talk about how Praxium sort of fits into that model as well?
Yeah, so homeschooling, we landed it in New Hampshire in 2014. We have 3 kids, and when we first moved, we didn't think that we would do homeschooling or unschooling. We were interested in it, but we just didn't know what it was like. So when we got here, we realized that there were several families that were also doing the unschooling model, homeschooling their children, and when the Praxium was opened, it was just one of those things that fit. That people could come and offer classes to their kids. We've got had a Taekwondo class there. We've had algebra classes. My youngest, well, actually, my older 2 sons have done an early math class there when they were, 7, 8 years old. And then there's calculus classes there. There's adult classes. We've had seminars. And the Praxium has really been just one of those open spaces that is kind of a hub that people can gather and offer whatever they want. So there's probably, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so families that have younger children that are involved in the community. And so you were mentioning also Praxium 2.0. We're looking at expanding that in Praxium 2.0, trying to have an outdoor space so the kids can run around and just explore together. And having kind of a segregated area for that. So, we have co-working next to it, but we can have like an open area with a gym and just anything people can think of for educational events for their kids. So
can you talk a little bit about what made you decide to do the unschooling thing when you weren't necessarily sure about it when you got there? What convinced you? Because I think that it's something that a lot of people struggle with in this community. I think when you get a good handle on things, if you're somebody who has children, you get a good handle on what's going on government-wise, and you realize, oh, those are just indoctrination centers that are there. What was it that sort of shifted you and made you decide, okay, this is not only a moral idea or a good idea, but this is something that we're actually gonna try?
Sure. So one of the first things that you deal with is fear, right? You say, well, people have always done this or recently done this with their kids. They put them in school, and that's how you learn, and that's all you know. And then once you start to see that other people have kids that haven't been in school or are currently not in school, and they're still competent individuals and still learning things, that fear starts to subside, and you realize, wow, well, we can do this without having to put them in a center all day long, 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Learning happens all the time, so why can't we do that ourselves? So once we were engaging with other families for a few months before the school year started, and as we got to the school year, we said, we've been doing learning all summer. Why do we have to then stop and put him in school, our oldest? And it was just about stepping back and realizing that learning can happen in all different ways, and there's all these great resources that didn't exist in the past. You can jump on the internet and find anything. There's Khan Academy if you want some more formal educational lessons. Kids can explore anywhere online and find whatever they want. And then when you have a community of like-minded individuals, you start to realize that those people have unique skills that they can then offer to kids. And it's kind of like the kids can see what you're doing and say, hey, I'm interested in that. Tell me about it. And it happens naturally instead of, sitting them down saying, this week you will learn this, or this month you will learn this. They can actually, when they're interested, engage with a certain topic. So.
This was something that I found very interesting, and it stood out to me. It was remarkable when I was there. The number of times that and this was something that seemed very new to me, and it's something that I've discussed with people quite a bit, is that our culture is a very age segregated culture, and I feel that that's one of the divisions. Like, we often talk about the racial divisions, the religious divisions, but I feel like one of the most powerful divisions that is being used is this age segregation division. I mean, we already there's a natural, parents and children, kids of a certain age, right, are naturally going to break away from their parents. But I see, you know, there used to be a time when even children of all ages were, you know, interacting with each other, and now that's, you know, really we're putting them into these boxes. One thing that I noticed was the number of adults engaging with children within this community, and you're absolutely right that it's like, yeah, of course, you've got intelligent individuals, and they see these adults doing something, and they can act as a mentor. Can you talk a little bit about how, if you've seen that being a difference in your own children's lives? Because I found it to be something remarkable and something people kept bringing up as something that they themselves found to be really positive.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And, you know, my oldest child, for instance, he'll engage with some of the adults that are in the community. Our friend Mike or Ken will walk up to them, and he knows that they've got a particular thing that they're really good at, or they've got topics that I may not know much about, and he'll ask them questions. So, you know, he'll just feel free to engage with them. And it's neat because then they don't just shun the kid or say, hey, go away, kid. You know, they'll talk to them about it, and it's just a unique perspective that they're able to engage all these adults in different ways and gain some knowledge from them. So,
it's a knowledgeable group. I mean, I know that Swarm City actually had their release at the Praxeum, right? They sort of filmed their release. Talk a little bit about how you, I mean, as an entrepreneur yourself, like talk about how how different it is, or what things are different about having a space for both people who are entrepreneurs and who are like-minded when it comes to their sort of libertarian views. How you've seen that difference, what you've seen spawn out of that, this sort of incubator.
Sure. So, you know, human action is, you know, from Austrian economics and Mises, and that's obviously why we have the name. But also Praxeum comes from praxeology, and it's just, you know, the embodiment of human action, and that's what we want to do with the space. So once you have that space where everything can take place, you don't know how, you know, one thing can bleed over into another, or how it can inspire something else. You have the co-working space there, and the kids can see that these adults are doing productive things there. So, you know, I believe that leading by example is a good way to educate younger children. And so when we have the space there and they look over and they see somebody getting work done or making a business happen, it inspires them to say, wow, this is something I can do. I can also be an entrepreneur. What do I want to do in the world? So I believe that's really inspiring to the younger generation, but also the adults that are there, they can see the kids learning these things and realize that they're not done learning either. So, you know, when my children have started to be homeschooled, I started to jump into the say Khan Academy with them, and I took up a couple of courses and just did it alongside them. Obviously a different topic, but you know, they saw me learning it, and I was like, wow, this is cool. There's topics here that I want to pick up on too. So I think it's we both feed off of each other, and yeah, that's great.
So in terms of expanding this project, I think that it's really interesting. But you also had, just to show the amount of support, I mean, you guys had this fundraising, and it seems like it's been next to no time. And I think you already hit your first goal. Talk a little bit about, because I know that it's a community space that you guys, and as you say, with the ideas of human action, that you guys have left sort of open, that it can, you know, it's sort of a blank slate for people to come and do what they feel needs to be done to move this thing forward. Talk about, as you're expanding this, even within the fundraising, was it surprising to you that you guys were able to raise funds that quickly?
Yeah, it blew our minds. So we originally launched the fundraiser a couple days before Free Coast Festival last month. And yeah, it's not even been a month yet since we announced the fundraiser, and we hit I think $151,000 the other day, a couple days ago. So we had an anonymous donation that was $100,000, and then we also had a few community members donate, you know, a few $1,000s each, and then we just had a recent $25,000 pledge from a family here on the coast, saying that they would match one for one, $25,000 up to $25,000. So I think there's still like $13,000 left of that matching funds out there. Wow. But yeah, it's seriously just over 3 weeks now. and we're at $151,000, and a lot of support from the community. They want to see this happen, and we're excited to let them jump in. And we have a board, but we want people to figure out what they want in the community and then be champions of it. So we're not running everything through a committee. We're not being a central authority in the space. We're saying, hey, if you're a member of this space, or you're a community member that's in good standing and wants to do something here, we're here for you. We want to support it in any way we can, but it's your project, so do it, run with it, get support. So it's really neat that we're not just forcing it to be done through a committee or through one or two people. We're allowing the community to come and, like you said, use it as a blank slate in their canvas. So
I love it, man. I'm glad that you were able to come on. I feel that it's very important because you guys are doing such a unique project, and it is such a unique community there. And I think that in many ways you guys are kind of a petri dish. And I wanted to bring people's attention to what you guys are doing and the experiment that you're putting through, because there's a lot of very intelligent people that I met there, a lot of very talented people, and I think that we see, it's been quite the little proving ground for Swarm City, and it's the support
Sure.
there as a project that I think is going to make a lot of people's lives better. I think there are going to be many more of those. So I thank you for coming on, dude. It's been a crazy day here for us, but but thanks for coming on, and we will follow. Sure. We will follow with this project, and I'm sure that we'll have you back on again to talk about the cool stuff you guys are doing.
Awesome, and I'd like to plug our website.
Please
do. Humanaction.foundation. Go check it out. And there's also freecoast.org. We've got a lot of blogs up there and local happenings of what's going on here on the Free Coast. And our fundraising page is up there too. So go check it out.
Perfect. Kyle Mohney, Human Action Foundation, thank you very much for being on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Christian, yes, are we still streaming on YouTube?
We're on.
That's going to be your new job on the checklist, dude, because now we've missed it twice.
Yeah.
We've missed it twice, but that's going to be your new job. Well, speaking of not being up, and hopefully we're still up all around, but
I've been checking the
last week, thank God we're on Facebook now, and thank God we were on YouTube. This is why you have to have redundancy, right? This is why you have to have redundancy. Last week, we had a very interesting thing happen. The Facebook feed started acting up, and we didn't know what the hell was going on. Mm-hmm. Right after we did the story on Mark Zuckerberg and on Facebook handing over information to the government, and we showed Mark Zuckerberg sweating. So then you were like, something's going on with the Facebook feed? And I went and looked at our account, and this is what showed up. So this is right after I tweeted, wow, Facebook disabled our account and activist post stream right after we played a clip of Zuckerberg sweating when asked a privacy question. Show this suspended thing here. This is what showed up. It was just a page. It said, we recently noticed unusual activity from your account. We've logged you out to help keep Facebook safe for you and everyone else. To get back into your account, we'll walk you through a few steps. And that says secure account. And then what it went to, Christian, you could pull back to us. What it went to from there, this is like the 10th time that they've done this. They're fucking around with that account and fucking around with the stream. What do they make me do? It says upload a photo with your face, which I find to be the weirdest. Like, how the hell does that secure the account? Yeah, you do a show. How does that secure the? No, it's not. It's just it's a way that someone in there can just easily. It's just like a easy click, like boom. So it's not a termination. It's not a suspension. It's just like we can take them off the air right now. Mm-hmm. And it made the stream go black. And then now the recording of the stream wouldn't play. So this is just yet another step. I got an email today. After activist post YouTube debacle, which is still down. Lori Harfinist, the resident on RT, reached out to me, and she was like, let me know what happens with this. I'm going to report about it on RT.
Nice.
She just sent me an email this morning. Tuesday, there's going to be a story.
Awesome.
From her.
That's cool.
So huge shout out to Lori Harfinist. We love you. Thank you so much for that. RT tomorrow. So yeah, what do you want to bet that the YouTube account goes back on?
Right.
after the RT story. I bet you it does. I bet you it doesn't stay off. But one thing that is going to stay off of YouTube accounts is going to be external links in video. Show this YouTube ad story. This is from Engadget. YouTube is cracking down on external links in videos. YouTube has sent some creators into a panic when it blocked their ability to link out to external sites in their end cards. A lot of people use those cards to link to merchandise they sell and to Patreon pages where fans can pledge a set amount per month to support their projects. The video streaming platform didn't intend to block Patreon or any other URL in particular, though. Turns out it simply made the feature exclusively available to members of the YouTube Partner Program. Here's YouTube's statement about the change. Quote, in order to use externally linking end cards in videos, creators are being asked to join the YouTube Partner Program so that we can evaluate the validity of the channel, as well as determine whether the channel is following our community guidelines and advertiser policies. This update is meant to curb abuse and does not affect current YouTube partners or existing end cards. Additionally, channels do not have to actually monetize any videos as part of this requirement. So Christian, they're setting up a whole new, so people have been linking out to their Patreon, right? Subscribe here.
Right.
Subscribe and please subscribe to my Patreon. And this is how a lot of people are making money. Now, I saw this shit coming. That's why we have never asked for donations. Here's what I just want to speak a little bit about this whole donations thing. I know there are a lot of people out there who they have chosen this, but you see it's way too easy to cut off, especially if you're receiving your donations through a third party. So Lauren Southern had her Patreon cut, right? In this case, YouTube is going to make it harder and harder than ever for people to actually have the link to their Patreon.
Smart.
For people to donate.
Smart for YouTube.
Oh, they're gonna make this shit super, super hard.
Yeah.
I'm taking the monetization off of our videos.
Nice.
Because we don't need it.
Yeah.
We make basically no money off YouTube monetization, and it's just it starts flagging shit and does all of this. What do we have instead? Well, you see the shirts. Crypto Savage. People can get those at governyourself.com. Why don't you put that up? Yes, indeed. And of course, my book. Get that at selfownership.me or vinarmani.com/selfownership. Both go to the same place. And now the vodka. Babyvodka.com.
Dude, the video?
Well, people are going to see that because I'm not just going to let that go. But what I do want to say before we go to break, because I think that it's very important. We need to be creating alternatives. And within those alternatives, we need to step outside of the mindset of someone else taking care of us.
Yep.
Part of the thing with the Human Action Foundation is there are enough of us in this community. If we will provide something of value, and that's the message to people as well. This is what we want to be doing. We would prefer that we could pay all of our bills doing just this, right?
Yeah.
That it could all be paid doing the work that we do here, writing the books, designing the apparel, more products. And the thing is, the less time we have to spend earning money in other ways, all we're going to do is create more stuff. So the thing is, if you like what we're doing, if you want to see it go further, this is how you support. But you don't support by just giving money. Because it doesn't raise you to another level. It doesn't raise us to another level, right? I want the book to sell because then I start thinking of the next book to write. If you just give me money, I don't do anything. That's like the universal basic income. Don't just donate because you like it.
Yeah.
No. Let this person figure out something to sell you.
Yep.
Let's have an exchange of energy. Because I think after a while, especially these Patreon people who make quite a bit of money with Patreon, like the one thing with us, if somebody orders a shirt, you're going to mail it to that person.
Right.
You're going to send them something that they can touch. Same goes with the book.
And it's made here too.
It's made here. Same goes with the vodka. There's a story behind it. There's an energy of hours that goes into it, and that's the thanks. And the thing is, it's a real exchange, energy for energy.
Absolutely.
That's what this is about. Like, of course, at the end of the day, you got to pay your bills. But we would all love to pay our bills doing something that we enjoy and creating real value. And that's what I think that, we are striving to bring to the table. That's what I was seeing in New Hampshire when I was there. That's why I wanted to bring Kyle Mohney on to talk about that's the vibe that's going on there. And I think that that's something that it's not just about doing a podcast so that people can hear your voice.
No.
It's not like, if we didn't have something legitimate to say, if I didn't feel like if I didn't think that we could come in here every single week and give people information that they were not going to hear anywhere else, if I was just going to talk about things that have already been talked about, if we were just going to have guests on who everybody has had as guests and talk about the same shit that everybody else talks about, I wouldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, same here.
I wouldn't do it. If I didn't think, look, if you were just going to copy the designs of other people's shit,
Yep.
why do it?
Yeah, it's fucking boring.
If I was just going to write a book that regurgitated things that people had already said, basically write a fucking book report, and if I didn't think that I had original thoughts that no one had heard before, I wouldn't spend the time writing the fucking book. Same goes for fucking software.
Actually, this is interesting. Yesterday I took a look at the Steve Jobs quote, the crazy ones.
Okay.
And I reversed it. So I said exactly the opposite of it. And
Okay.
I was like, this is fucking, like, it makes you think.
What's the opposite? Go ahead.
I'll read it to you right now.
Okay.
Let me pull it up real quick. Here.
I like that quote.
Quote's
It's
amazing.
here's to the crazy ones. Is that? It's
Yeah.
like a poem, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You find it?
Yeah, one sec.
Reversed
Okay.
it. That's interesting.
I had a couple posts.
A couple. Got it?
Here's to the normies, the basic ones, the order followers, the round pegs within round holes, the ones who see things exactly the same. They're fond of rules. You quote them, disagree with them, glorify them, or vilify them, but the only thing that you can do is ignore them because they keep things exactly the same. They move the human race backwards. And while some may see them as ordinary ones, we see them as plain, because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can't change the world are the ones who don't.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. And I think it's going out into the world and finding something new. It's very interesting. It's one of the things that my father said to me. It stuck with me, man. Of all the things that he ever said to me, this one stuck with me. I was maybe 15, 16, and he said, if you can do anything in your life, do one thing new. Just do something new. One thing.
Right.
Even if it's one thing, and it will give your life meaning. And you look around and you see people who are just copying what other people have already walked the path.
You know what's interesting too is sometimes you get stuck. Like me, I would consider myself a creative artist, but you get stuck sometimes with, you have a roadblock or whatever. And that's a perfect example of it. Is I just took Steve Jobs' quote and I added my own little twist to it. I just reversed it, and that's now become yours.
Absolutely. Well, this is how you move a culture forward, right? Is that there's got to be new thought. Now, where does new thought come from? I really do think it's inspiration. Like you can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's yes, there's a level of intelligence or whatever, but I find that the people who are out looking for inspiration and who look at the world as a place of inspiration and who are looking to make connections between things are the ones who stumble across these concepts. And the other thing about it is, it doesn't necessarily even have to be you that does it. You share an idea with someone else. You become interested in other people's thoughts.
Yeah, and it brings people together. It's nothing but beneficial all the way around for everybody.
All the way around. For
everybody. Even the original creator, the person that created, as long as you credit it and don't try
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, like for me, I don't really care if I'm credited.
Yeah, a lot of people don't too.
Yeah, but I think that the people who, I think that the people who truly feel that they've delivered something or delivered an idea, like, so any idea that I've delivered where someone has been like, oh, wow, that's, I haven't heard it said like that, or that's groundbreaking, or whatever. Like, any time that something like that happens, the thing is, I never feel like it's coming from me. It always feels like revealed truth. Because the fact of the matter is, the truth is eternal. We discover the truth.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like Marconi, who invented the radio. He didn't invent radio waves.
No,
those radio waves had been there since the beginning of the fucking universe. He just could hear them. Or, you know, people who discovered bacteria. Oh, here's these fucking bacteria.
Yeah, it's not like the
bacteria had to have been there this whole fucking time just because you didn't see it. And I think that that's the way to look at it, is that it's like, look, dude, the truth is like unending. Why don't you step into the unknown a bit?
Exactly.
And you'll encounter something. And I think that that's the message. That's where we're at. That's right now. That's the place, and why it's so important for independent media. But beyond just reporting things that, and you know, there's so much, like when it comes to conspiracy theories and whatnot, there's so much out there that it's fucking jumbled and garbled. But I think very few people are actually looking at the world, trying to get all the information. And you know what? If you don't have enough information, if something just seems fishy, just say it seems fishy. Don't add shit on top of it.
Right.
Unless there's some actual information. And when you have that information, just add the information, say this is your theory, see if it makes sense, let people try to tear it down, debate it. That's it. Use reason. And that's the end. And then let people decide from there. And
don't be scared of the debate, too. A lot of people are frightened of that. Like, oh, my God, they called me out. It's like, no, they actually are trying to prove or trying to expose something that you missed maybe, or, you know, it benefits both parties.
Which goes, I think, directly to our guest for the second hour, Ron Paul. So he's going to be there. What do we got? Are we almost at this? Oh, we're at the second hour. So let's do this. Let's go to break, and then we will come back, and we've got some other stories, and then we'll jump into Ron Paul.
The spirit of art. The spirit of technology. The spirit of individuality. Baby Vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Vin Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Vin Armani. Tailored by Christian Reyes. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And of course, we are streaming live on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. That is facebook.com/Activist Post. So we've got some stories, and then we are going to get to our guest in the second hour, very special guest, Dr. Ron Paul. Almost needs no introduction. But before we do that, Countermarkets, trends and strategies for maximum freedom. Get your first issue free at countermarkets.com. So, how do you support the show? If you want to see more content, yet another piece of content, Countermarkets This is the last chance to get your September issue because the October issue is on its way this week. It'll be out by the end of this week. I'm looking very forward to that. But again, counter markets, if you're wondering how do you move into a space where you can make a living and make the world a better place? See, I believe that so long as you're operating under the principles that we try to lay out, so long as you're behaving with self-ownership and you think that proactively ahead, any business idea that you have, any entrepreneurship that you do is naturally going to be moving the world forward. It's when you decide that you're actually going to do something for yourself and you're going to do it in a moral way. I think that that's where people have the biggest problem, right? And I think that that is one of the most difficult things in talking to these people who are socialists, who are gives-me-dats, who want to sit around and let this magical money that they think the government has that is not stolen from other people, this magic money, just fall into their hands and for them to be taken care of. Those are the people, as Christian said, that move society backwards. We need the maximum number of people looking at problems and thinking about solutions. And you can do it. Just even watching this show, or listening to it, participating in what we're doing shows that you are somebody who wants solutions. So, what have we done with counter markets? We've gone forward, and every month, the group of us, agorists, entrepreneurs, walking the walk, as well as talking the talk, and sharing with you our own trends and strategies. And you can go and get your first issue free. Countermarkets.com. Get your first issue free. You can buy with cryptocurrency and get a massive discount on your subscription. Believe me, it's worth it. Just for the crypto reports that we have, if you would have followed those, you would have made enough money for 20 subscriptions already, just with a basic following of those. So we're trying to provide value to you because we want to move this thing forward. More than just selling a product. It's very important to us that we move this thing forward. So that's what you can do for yourself, and it's a way that you can help the show and help the movement as well. Countermarkets.com. So Christian, we've got, before we get to Ron Paul, I figured that we would cover a few stories related to Vegas. I mean, we've covered this weed thing. One of the first videos in my sort of coming out as a publicly being libertarian that I did, one of my first rants was, legalizing marijuana will make you less free. I've said it. Yep. We've gone over it. We're seeing it happen. And it was an outlier position. I think a lot more people are realizing it still, though. Right. I keep still even hearing from libertarians that they think legalization of marijuana is a good idea. It puts the government more into your life. You know, I think that it's perfect. Ron Paul represented some views that people at first thought when he first burst, I mean, he'd been on the scene for a while, but when he truly burst onto the scene in 2008, which we're going to talk to him about, people thought he was kind of out there. People thought he was a little bit crazy, but everything that he said has turned out to be true. And that's why, you know, a lot of people consider him to be sort of the godfather of the movement in many ways, because he brought these views forward. So this is one that people need to be paying attention to. Let's look at this, a few stories here that I think illustrate just exactly how far we've come or not come, how far backwards we've gone in terms of liberty in the short span of time since the legalization of marijuana. Let's look at this Colorado story. News number one. This is news number one. So why is the legalization of marijuana, for those that don't know, legalization of marijuana, why will it make you less free? Because you are operating under the principle that the government has a right to tell you whether or not you can grow a plant and whether or not you can consume that plant. Now, this is, if there's ever been a human right, like if we're talking about Western Judeo-Christian Islamic culture, even you go to the Native American cultures, doesn't matter. The first thing that God does is God gives man dominion over plants and Adam was created to tend a garden. He was a gardener. And then when he was kicked out, he was told that he would plow the field and he would eat of the herbs of the field. This has always been the domain of man. You go into the Indians in this desert, and it was all of their creation stories are about God giving them a planting stick and some corn. This has been something given to us by God and now being taken away by man. And when you say that you want the legalization of something and that you want it because you prefer it to the criminalization, they're both the same thing. They're both the same thing because they're going to legalize some aspects and criminalize others based on preference. And here we go. We're going to show you exactly how this works. Let's look at Colorado. DEA busy raiding rural pot grows in Colorado. This is from the Denver Channel. Drug Enforcement Agency agents across Colorado are dealing with a growing problem, a surge in illegal grows in rural parts of the state. Documents obtained by Denver 7 show agents are seeing a jump of about 50% in illegal grows across rural areas. In one recent case, along the western slope, about 9,000 plants were found on 2 islands on the Colorado River near Grand Junction. Quote, "We had an issue before. It's much more significant now," said Barbara Roach, Denver's DEA special agent in charge. Quote, "It's basically individuals coming in and taking advantage. There's no tax base. They're utilizing our natural resources." This is interesting here. The article says, "These aren't victimless crimes either, impacting all of us, including our environment." Quote, "We already have a limited amount of water we can all use, right? You have the population, you have the farmers, and now you have the marijuana growers," said Roach. "Agents feel drug organizations come here to Colorado because they don't think they'll be prosecuted. Many of the groups have ties to Russia and Cuba." So, Christian, they create a market, but then they're going to control who can grow it. And they're going to take the money from the taxes, because we already covered that they're spending tax money on special task forces to stop illegal growers. And what do we have? Here they're using it.
Jeez.
Now, before,
Yeah.
right? They say it's increased. No, what's increased is their seizures have increased. Why have their seizures increased? Because their budget has increased. It's not new that people are growing weed in the wilderness of Colorado. This is not fucking new. Why it's increased is their budget has increased. Why has their enforcement budget increased? Their enforcement budget has increased because they're taking taxes out of weed now. Before, it was a complete 100% drain on government resources. Now, they're actually getting more money to do it. So, they're going to control whether or not you can grow a plant and what plants you can grow. That's a fucking bad principle to allow a group of psychopaths with a monopoly of violence to operate under. Because now it's weed. But it's plants. If it's weed, it's every plant. And if they're going to say that they're doing it because it impacts the environment, because it's about water, they're not even doing it. They've moved away from saying, oh, it's bad for you, it's a dangerous drug. They're not on that. They can't use that anymore. They've changed the narrative. Now the narrative is, 1, you don't have a permit to grow. 2, water. You're taking water away from people. You're hurting our environment. It's an environmental issue. Collectivism at its finest. Collectivism at its fucking finest. That growing plants, now mind you, these are growing in like rural outback areas. It's not commercial farming with irrigation and the whole nine. This is marijuana. It grows like a weed. Growing in the middle of nowhere, that's bad for the environment now. Because collectivism, you can make anything be anything. Right? So they're going to control whether you can grow it. Now, plants in your hands, that's your property. Government has no right to your property. Oh, but you gave them that too. Let's look at this fake store story. I find this story very interesting. This is out of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. It's right here in town. Las Vegas police bust fake marijuana store. Everything about Elevate Medical Pharmacy looked like a legitimate marijuana dispensary. A large sign out front displayed the business's name. A neon open sign shone bright in the window. Inside, it looked like a typical pot shop. OG Kush, Sour Diesel, and other popular marijuana strains inside glass display cases, a variety of cannabis-infused edibles labeled with dates of when they were baked, and even pamphlets listing the THC potency of most of the products. But Elevate Medical Pharmacy at 2951 Westwood Drive in Las Vegas never had a license to sell, according to a police report released Thursday. It was not immediately clear how long Elevate Medical Pharmacy had been in operation. The tax department said it received a tip about the unlicensed marijuana store and contacted Clark County officials, who then reached out to Metro. Quote, "This is a good reminder to the community to make sure they've purchased marijuana from a state-licensed store where the products have been produced and tested under tight regulations," Tax Department Director Dion Contine said. In other states, especially California, illegal dispensaries have plagued the marijuana industry for years. There were an estimated 106 illegal medical marijuana dispensaries across Los Angeles County as of April, according to a county report. And while about one-third had been shut down, an LA deputy district attorney described the process as like playing whack-a-mole as the businesses they shut down keep popping back up, the Los Angeles Daily News reported. So, Christian, what I find interesting about this is how the only thing that they could say in this case was this person wasn't paying their taxes in the way that we have said. They didn't pay us the upfront bribe. What I find funny about it is Metro, no clue. Now, I looked at where this place was. This place is like over in the area like around Spearmint Rhino, kind of over there, where all the strip clubs, industrial. Metro, police department, they roll through those particular streets every fucking night. Clearly, they had no problem. Clark County, which would be the business licensing jurisdiction, no problem. Didn't get shut down by code enforcement. They got a tip. The state tax department got a tip, probably from a fucking competitor in the area, right? Got a tip. They had to call all the way down. So this dispensary is following all the things that they need to be following. And again, they can no longer use the excuse. You see what it's gotten to? Like, they can no longer use the excuse, oh, it's a dangerous drug. Oh, yeah, it's a nuisance.
They're actually putting out information that says that it's helpful now. It's like, when are you guys saying that it's helpful? All this time you're saying it's bad.
But it still is going to be a crime because this particular guy, as it goes on later on to say, this particular guy was incarcerated. Now, he had obviously, the amount that was in there was like 25 pounds of smokable flour, like 8 pounds of edibles or 18 pounds of edibles or something like that. But it's like, think about that for just 1 second. You go to jail if you don't have if you don't have this piece of paper. Granted by who? By what? But so this bureaucracy, you pay them. Just think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
That's what we call the protection racket. When the mob does it, they come to your business and they say, either you pay us this amount every month or we burn your business down.
Right.
In this case, they say, either, what does the mob do? We'll send men with guns to kidnap you and take your business away. These guys say, either you pay us or we'll send men with guns to kidnap you and take away your business.
It's crazy.
And they say taxation isn't theft.
It's absolutely crazy.
Principles over preferences. Principles over preferences. It goes to show they never cared.
No.
They never actually cared about weed. They cared about control.
Control.
If we can't regulate it and license it, no one can sell it. That's all it's about. That's all that's going on. It's a racket. So when somebody says, oh, I'm for legalization, you're just for the state. You're just for the state enforcing shit in a little bit of a different way, but it's more control.
Giving all your power up.
So, we've got control where you can grow it, control what you can do with your property in terms of sales. Now, some people are like, well, that's okay because they're controlling the safety of it. Now, how many people have OD'd from bad weed? In the history of fucking weed, let's say 0, because that's the fucking number. Weed has never. Like, am I in fucking Bizarro World? Am I in Bizarro World where weed needs to be tested? You know how you test weed? You open the bag and you go, oh, that's some good shit. That's how you test weed. That's how weed has been tested for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's fucking weed. It's fucking weed. Like, did everything shift about this fucking plant? This is why I had the biggest problem with medical marijuana. Like, why did we even start saying that?
Yeah.
It's just weed. It's just fucking weed. Medical marijuana is no different than recreation. It's the same weed. It's the same fucking weed. It's mind-blowing to me. It's the same weed that we've all been smoking. There's no, well, it's stronger. It's getting stronger because the demand is up. Because you've got people who could legally experiment with it. Mm-hmm. But goddamn, it's the same weed. But in case you were wanting to smoke it, you do know, of course, that you can't smoke weed in public in Nevada. Still, they said, oh, legalization. Really? Is something really legal if you can't do it in public? I mean, really. Like, you could walk into a store. Imagine if you could, like, what is it that you can buy in a store
that you can't do
in public? Like, you could drink, you could, like, what? So, what are they talking about? Let's go to this lounges, and then we'll go to Ron Paul. This is from The Hill. Nevada could be the first state to allow marijuana lounges. Nevada could become the first state to allow users of recreational marijuana to light up in clubs and lounges, a state legal body said this week, opening a new front in what is already a booming pot business. The State Legislative Council Bureau said Monday that state law does not prohibit city or county governments from operating a lounge or facility in which patrons may use marijuana. Cities and counties are allowed to adopt their own rules governing those businesses and decide whether they are required to obtain special permits, the Bureau said. The ruling means tourists and visitors may soon have a place to consume marijuana in public. Pot smoking is banned under state law in Nevada's hotels and casinos. None of the 4 other states where marijuana is legal for recreational use, Washington, Colorado, Alaska, and Oregon, currently allow so-called pot lounges. All 4 states restrict marijuana use to private residences. The 3 other states where legislators and regulators are finalizing rules in advance of legalized marijuana, California, Massachusetts, and Maine, are not currently considering legal pot lounges. Legalization advocates say pot lounges are a logical step, especially if states where marijuana is allowed hope to connect their pot industry to tourism. Quote, allowing regulated social use areas is a good solution that recognizes cannabis consumers' rights to congregate just like alcohol drinkers can in bars, while also protecting non-consumers' rights not to inhale secondhand smoke, said Tom Angel, the founder of Marijuana Majority, a pro-legalization group. It should be a no-brainer, especially in tourist towns like Las Vegas, where visitors don't have private residences. So again, a misunderstanding about rights. So this guy says it recognizes cannabis consumers' rights to congregate just like alcohol drinkers can in bars, while also protecting non-consumers' rights not to inhale secondhand smoke. Well, there is freedom of assembly, right? We have freedom of assembly. You can assemble. You can possess marijuana. Thing is that you can't. Now, any private business can obviously say no smoking. Clearly, you can regulate what you want. But to say, if you want to allow marijuana to be smoked in your business, you have to acquire a special permit. It's just yet another. So like now you're, and again, it's like now, before, if someone was smoking weed, it would have to be a law enforcement officer to come into your business, which they're just not going to do. If there's not a complaint, law enforcement's not walking in. But now it can be code enforcement.
Jesus.
Who are authorized to walk into your business at any time. You allowed somebody to smoke weed, so now you don't have a special permit. This is, so you still got to smoke it at home in private. Well, so what's the fucking deal? All you did All you did was you empowered the cronies of the current government because they allow a limited number of licenses. And who do you think gets those licenses? The existing big players in any city and their families. That's who gets it. This is what people are going for. But this is where we have to make that separation. I think that the things like the Praxeum, where it's like we need to start having open spaces. We need to think differently. Yeah. We need to think about alternatives, because when you allow this walled garden and when you allow people to have power and you play by their fucking rules, it's going to be less freedom, less freedom, less freedom. It's so not about weed. So not about weed.
Mm-hmm. There's the vampire.
There's the vampire. Someone who has been on the front lines of talking about freedom. I know people have been waiting, and now we are finally to. We are going to talk to, I had a nice, brief, but very, very nice interview with Dr. Ron Paul. We are going to get right into that. Christian, why don't we just go ahead and go straight to it? My guest today almost needs no introduction, especially to viewers of this show, physician, author, radio host, and of course best known as a former congressman, Ron Paul. Welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. I've been very excited to do this interview, and in particular, I want to talk with you about something that keeps coming up in my travels and in my discussions with fellow libertarians. When I'm speaking with libertarians but in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I'm always curious to know, how did you come to these ideas? Because it's very rare to meet kind of a second-generation libertarian who says, oh yeah, my parents, certainly of that age, my parents were libertarians and I was raised that way. It seems, though, that constantly your name comes up. They say, in particular, something about the 2008 Ron Paul presidential campaign. And so having you here, I thought it would be a great opportunity. I'd love to go back to that moment, because I feel like it's a spark that lit off a movement that is growing like a wildfire right now. It seems to be the most exciting thing happening, certainly in politics, maybe in political philosophy right now. If we could, if you would help us, since obviously you were there, you had run for president before, but something happened significantly different. Did you know going into that particular presidential campaign that something was very different?
After a while, I gathered that there was something happening more than I had expected. I knew exactly what I believed in. I had been talking about it for 20 years or so, way back in the 70s. Never had high expectations and thought that the most important thing was to introduce people to ideas. So when I ran for Congress, it was just, to speak out, because we had difficult economic times and monetary issue was a big issue in the 70s. So I ran, but did not expect to win a congressional seat. So that sort of got me involved in that. So no, I never had high expectations. I thought that the best I could do is leave a voting record on and trying to explain why I was voting a certain way, because it was different than what most Republicans and Democrats were doing, and conservatives and liberals. So it was a different format that I was using. But I think what was happening in excuse me, 2008 was there was recognition that things were failing. There was the 9/11 event was a big event. Foreign policy was in shambles. We were involved in too many wars. We were losing these wars. There was no progress. There was we were entering into a very, very difficult economic phase with the downturn of 08 and 09. And so there was a great need for something. Now, I didn't create the message. I delivered a message which had been around, in something I was introduced to many, many years ago, probably in the 50s and the 60s, and that was the libertarian message, the emphasis on individual liberty. And so there were a lot of people who wrote and understood this. I was influenced by the Austrian economists and all the people who had explained what libertarianism was all about. And I think those ideas were introduced, they were there, and they were brewing, but they never had a national discussion about it. And that presidential campaign offered it, and so it was new and different. But where the shock came, and the surprise for me, was the reception. The reception was very, very good. And because I would say things that had not been said, but evidently a lot of people had already been thinking about it. So I never took credit, you know, for the revolution. Some people say the Ron Paul revolution. Well, really it isn't. It's a freedom and liberty revolution that was going on, but the seeds had been planted, the needs were there, and I happened to be a representative of those views, and I was able to express those in the campaign, and to many people's surprise, including myself, there were a lot of young people say, hey, that makes a lot of sense. So I was pleased with that, I have to admit.
Your view, I guess, could be characterized as a conservative view, certainly in the view of individual liberty, certainly in the vein of the founding fathers, some might say. And yet there were so many young people in particular, and still now I feel like this movement, it really gains through young people. Obviously you have many now on the other side who are much more authoritarian. Why do you think, what was different about the country at that time that people were ready to accept that viewpoint, that people were ready to go back to individual liberty, or why it was standing out in people's consciousness, and why it's carried through, and why that message has been so strong when it wasn't in the preceding sort of decades?
Well, I think that people will naturally, you know, listen to and respond to this message. I think it was just not offered to them, even though there were the intellectuals who wrote about it, and we were able to study and understand economic policy. But I think it was really a need for something. And when I would talk to young people, and they were enthusiastic about the campaign and excited, and we would talk, and I'd ask the same question you would ask: how did you get interested in this? And they would usually respond, well, it sounds like you're telling the truth. I said, but other candidates are very often, they don't say they don't like the Constitution. They all take the same oath. They all say the same thing. I said, what's different? And they said, we don't believe the other ones. So it was a matter of a message that had been spoken. People wanted it, but a lot of the spokesmen for the liberty message was lip service, and young people seem to be able to see through this a little bit better. But when they get in the older age group, I just think that they have been conditioned. And I even think that that is what happened. I think we're all born with a natural instinct to be ourselves. And then when it gets beaten out of us, you know, we have to conform. Our schools do it. Our government does it. The movies do it. And everybody talks about, well, you have to be part of this system. You can't be an individualist. And yet, I've figured that it took me a decade or so once I discovered, you know, I don't like what I'm hearing, and I go searching and looking for the explanation. So I was just excited about discovering Austrian economics that defended on moral principle and economic principles the free market, the real free market, and sound money, much of what the founders believed in. They believed in the gold standard. They didn't believe that you should have a powerful central government. They didn't preach the idea that we should have a police state. They didn't believe that we should be the world policeman. Yet that was all happening. And I think the one thing that really caught the attention of the young people was the change in attitude about personal liberty after 9/11. And that's when we had the TSA come in, we had the Patriot Act come in, and NSA came in, and NDAA, and civil liberties were being challenged. And the instinct of a young person is, you know, whether it's when a young person is 2 or 16, there is an instinct, you know, to want to be your own person. And I think that in a political sense, when it's offered to them, and if they can get the message of individual liberty from a moral viewpoint, that you have a right to your life, you have an obligation of your life, you have an obligation to take care of yourself, but the government has an obligation to protect your liberty and nothing else. They're supposed to get out of the way and let you take the care of your own problem. And this sense of responsibility, the young people responded to, because I didn't go to the campus and say, you know what, I don't even believe in student loans. That's a system that's not going to work. That's going to create a lot of debt. No, I didn't do that. The idea that you're responsible for yourself on personal liberties, on how you run your personal life, your economic lives, and try to prevent the draining of the wealth from the country and our youth by sending them off to fight no-win wars, which we continue to do. It's a very, very positive, attractive message, not only to the young. I was delighted that during those campaigns early on, young people, sometimes 14 and 15 years of age, would drag their parents to my office, and they were influencing their parents, and the parents were delighted that their young people were thinking about this, but they were enthusiastic about it, and there was a message, and I think it is a message for young people, but we all should be young at heart when it comes to thinking about liberty, because the truth is, liberty, in the sense that I'm talking about it, is a very, very young issue. When you think 200, 300, 400 years, or even maybe a little bit longer, that's just a drop in the bucket when you talk about how long the earth has existed. So this experiment with self-reliance and individual liberty is something brand new, and I think it's something where there's a fertile field out there, in spite of what we are dealing with in Washington. Washington is the worst place to try to figure out, how they're really taking care of us and protecting us. But when you go to the campuses and talk to young people, find out what their desires are, they are very receptive to this message of liberty and self-reliance, responsibility, and allowing you to keep the fruits of your labor. So this is, and to allow to run your own life. I mean, how can anybody deny this, especially since it's that system that produces the greatest amount of prosperity? And the system we have today is designed almost to destroy the middle class, and the middle class keeps getting smaller and smaller. And that message is not that difficult to understand. And if they hear there's an answer to it, they become optimists. I was always surprised. I'd spend 45 minutes talking about the problem and 10 minutes talking about the answer. Is not complicated. And the surprise to me was the people who came out to support this message were very, very excited about how positive it was. And I thought that was pretty good. And I wondered about that. And somebody said, well, why they're positive is they're finally hearing what the real problem is, and nobody's lying to them, that everything is for free, and that the problems are there, and this is what it is, but the answer to it is something very positive. So that's an exciting message as far as I'm concerned.
So I've always found this very interesting. You were certainly alone on a lot of issues in terms of telling the truth when you were in Washington for many, many years. You were often the lone no vote on many things, and yet, as we're talking about, you had great success, as certainly in your political career, and even now it's carried through. I wonder, having been there, why are there still, after your success, why are there still so few elected officials in Washington? Obviously, your son is there. I'm thinking of people like Massey and Amash. But yet then I start trying to think, who else? Seeing the success that you had, seeing even the success that your son is having in moving this movement forward and the support that he has, why are there so few people entering into the political arena who have not taken up this torch full steam? Why are they still going back to those lies?
Well, I think what you're looking at is secondary to where the real issue. In the 1920s, our universities were filled with communists and socialists and welfareists and New Dealers. But even when Roosevelt ran in 1932, he ran as a principled, conservative, constitutional, gold standard, balanced budget, low tax person. But the thoughts and the establishment in the universities was just building. And then when you looked at what happened, then government was completely different. But now what we have today is government is still progressive in the sense that everybody is, influenced by big government. But what is happening now, and not so much in the university, more so than before, but because we have the internet, a lot of people are being introduced, so it hasn't been reflected in Washington. So the numbers are secondary. You have to have first the intellectual climate where the people who are influencing other people, that is writing the books and writing the journals, being on TV, and then eventually getting in government that will influence the people. So we're in transition. And a lot of people, most people I met in Washington never heard of Austrian economics. They don't care that much. They care about a political career. They may say good things, but they want to take care of their constituents. And the thing that they learn very, very fast, regardless of what they ran on, if you want to take care of your constituents and get the stuff they need, you have to be a team player, and you have to go along, and you have to vote the way we tell you to vote. And they've immediately become pragmatists, and they will go and they capitulate, and they vote the way the leadership wants, and then you rule yourself out of leadership position. If under today's conditions, if you get to be in leadership position and chairman of a committee, that means you sold out, literally so. Someday it'll be different. So that's not the measurement I looked at. I always, was looking outward for the people. But that's where I was surprised. And in those campaigns that you talked about, that's why I was surprised that there were so many, even on the foreign policy. When I had that little confrontation with the mayor from New York, Giuliani, because that was just seemed to be so outrageous. And yet that was the beginning of this awakening that maybe we do have responsibility for some of our problems, and it's not always to be put the blame on, somebody else outside, and that America is automatically exceptional, and we rightfully have the moral authority to be the policeman of the world. Well, the world's getting tired of that, and I think a lot of Americans now want to hear a different message.
So, before we go, I want to just touch on what you were speaking about the intellectual climate. I feel like we're in an era, and certainly, we see the Ron Paul Liberty Report signs behind you. The intellectual climate seems to have shifted in many ways. There's so much content, so many thinkers. It seems that the thought leaders, especially in the vein of liberty, have moved online, have moved on to other platforms, be that YouTube, podcast, etc. There's so much information out there. You're certainly contributing to this. We're seeing, though, I'm seeing people, even very big names, starting to be concerned about things like censorship, demonetization. It doesn't seem like it's coming from the government. This is something new. It seems like it's coming from these other platforms. I wonder what message or what thoughts you have as somebody who did stand alone, pushed the message through with great opposition through the years, has stood there and has been a bulwark against authoritarianism and has stood for liberty. What do you say as we start to see this new sort of crackdown, even though it's coming from seemingly the private sector? What do you say to the people who are out there trying to be those thought leaders and who feel this immense pushback from the establishment?
Well, I think there's a coming together by the military-industrial complex, corporations, big banks, and now our media, our social media. They were helped a lot by the government to get them started. They capitulate and turn the information over to the government. So you have to connect them with the government, which we can still do that. They are connected to the government, and they participate in the undermining of our liberties. So that, to me, is the important issue. But that doesn't mean that it's all over and we can't compensate, because you have your show. There's a lot of other ones. You can't believe how many young people I've met over the years that started their own show, and they reach out to people. I have no idea. Nobody has any idea how many people are reached by word of mouth. It's really one mind at a time that gets converted. But an idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by the government, by armies, or anybody else. And there's a need right now, and the answers are out there. They will be spread, but people can sort it out. Right now, people are knowing that some of my effort to spread a message has been curtailed by some in social media, and we have a difficulty with it. But we still do get a message out. And besides, if we just have enough liberty left, I think, in technology, we can compensate for some of this. If somebody is curtailing our liberties and they're not part of the government directly, then we have to inform people. But unfortunately, some of the complaints that you're talking about is a collusion between, the people who benefit. Military-industrial complex benefits, so they help present the government. Now, the people in the social media, if they turn information over to the government and violate our liberties by giving it to the government, then we can't sue them. They're exempt from lawsuits, and they have protection from the government. So all of a sudden, whether it's the media, or the arms manufacturers, anything, they are in bed with the government. And that's the big thing. And the biggest challenge I find is those who come from the left and say, well, we can't stand capitalism and freedom. But the crony capitalism, what they're criticizing, our job is to say, yes, we agree with you. There's a lot of people who are living off the government, and the government's taking care of them. But there's a big difference between free markets and crony capitalism, and I think that's the way it is in the media as well.
Well, I think we're just about out of time. Thank you so much, Ron Paul. Thank you for your time, your thoughts. Thank you for doing what you've done. It's been important, and what you continue to do. Of course, RonPaulLibertyReport.com. People can go and check that out. So thank you very much, Ron Paul, and hopefully we can have you back again.
Good to be with you.
So, Christian, why don't you jump back to us? I don't know. Maybe I didn't make that transition.
Wow.
So I think that, the big takeaway is that you look back, it's about 10 years now, coming up on 10 years, because that was the 2008 presidential campaign. And I think coming up on 2 years of a new American political movement, which I think that we are squarely in the middle of. One of the most important things, dude, these alternatives, like I said, I've been working, even this week, and before we go, because I think next week we are having someone from BitChute who has basically saved our ass when we got YouTube knocked down. Their platform operates on BitTorrent. It's got BitTorrent in the background. People know that I'm big on IPFS. I've put out a video helping people to get stuff on IPFS. I've continued working. This week, discovered that there is an interesting library out there for IPFS that is purely based in JavaScript, which basically allows any web page to turn a browser into an IPFS node.
Nice.
And so within the browser to get stuff up and down. Now can only do small files, but I've just created a workaround to take a big file, chunk it into little files, throw it up, and all of this. I've actually got it working.
Nice.
So a potential YouTube alternative, I'm going to get it to, it's in a working state right now, but I'm going to get it into a state where it's got some sample code for doing images, for doing video, for doing audio. So it both sends up to IPFS and pulls from IPFS using the IPFS protocols within the browser. I'm going to put that up, and I hope that people take the code and run with it. Like I say, it's JavaScript. I hope people take it. I hope they run with it. One of the most important things I think that people can do for Liberty right now, I'm actually moving. So I code in a bunch of languages, and I've generally just coded in whatever was the appropriate language for whatever platform I was on, whatever worked the best. I'm actually moving everything over to JavaScript.
Wow.
It's a simple language, but it's become, over the years, much more powerful. There's something called Node.js, which allows it to run basically back-end. And so I'm moving everything over to JavaScript. It's the easiest language, I think, for people to start learning. I would advise people who want to make huge differences, the biggest thing that you could do is learn to code. Or at least learn to be able to read some code, play around with it. It rules our lives. And I think that with IPFS being built the way that it is, so many new applications are going to be in JavaScript.
How long do you think it takes to learn something like that?
Oh, a couple weeks.
Really?
Couple weeks to get started. I mean, you can do a set up an environment to work in and do a hello world in JavaScript in probably a day.
Wow.
And I think it's a great one to start at. It's not strongly typed, it's not like C or Java. You step through. So first you learn procedural, where you just learn what's a variable, what are the different types, how do you basically the syntax, how it sort of runs, and then you learn more things. After you do a few projects like that, then you learn things about object oriented and all of that, how to do that type of programming. And then you learn test driven development and all of this. But it's all over time, right? And the way to do it is to just, how I always approach it is, once you sort of know the code and once you can read the code, then the next step is to just throw yourself into something that you don't understand. I think that's the easiest way to learn.
Gotcha.
Right? So you just, but it's the way that you learn. I think really it's the best technique for teaching yourself anything.
Anything, yeah.
And the great thing about learning to code is that there's any problem that you have, you can pretty much type in a description of that problem into Google, and you'll see people who have asked that same question before and how people have answered it.
I've done that with building websites too. And
Sure.
I don't know code at all, but it's something that I want to definitely learn and teach myself. But
what I've found though, dude, is like I don't work very well. Like when I first wanted to learn object-oriented programming, probably like over 10 years ago, I got like a giant book about it, and like I read a little bit in the book, and it was just like, it didn't make any sense. The way that I learn is kind of having some code and then kind of trying to alter it a little bit, and I think that's how most people do, like playing around with that code. So like that's why it's good to have a project that you want to do, right? And I think that this project will be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This project will be a good starting point. It would actually kind of be a good starting point for a lot of people to learn code. So, you start out with a project that you want to do, and then you walk through the pieces, and as soon as you don't understand something, you look it up.
Yeah.
And then you play around, you alter the code a little bit, see that does this. Okay, now you got it.
Right.
Now you've got it.
That's actually what I did with the websites. Is I couldn't figure out like how to get in a certain position or things like that, and I started Googling it, and then WordPress forums and stuff, and then I found out how to do it, and I just copied that and started moving it around.
Yeah, that's what they say. Great programmers write code. No, good programmers write code. Great programmers steal code.
With art too.
Yeah, it's true. Well, because why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
If somebody's already written the code and it works,
just use the code.
So it's really about, that's probably where I became good at researching online, right? Because that's how you solve the problems. And sometimes somebody's trying to solve it for a completely different reason. But just know that, like, yes, the problem has been looked at. Yes, the problem has been solved. So anyway, I'm working on this project. I think that it's very interesting. It certainly could be, it's completely decentralized for sure. And it could be that thing that we need, but it's going to take people to actually take a look at it and play around with it. So maybe it's something we'll talk about with the BitChute guys next week. So we covered that. Unfortunately, for those people watching YouTube, you missed my breakdown of my theory about what happened in Vegas last night, but I'm going to take that and I'll have that up. I'll have that up for everybody so that you could see the full amount. I think you got like maybe the last 5 minutes. So people who are watching on YouTube, you can see the full amount. Certainly you'll get that all on the podcast. As well as you could always just go to Twitter and at Vin Armani or Periscope at Vin Armani. The whole thing will be there. You can go to facebook.com/activistpost. The whole thing will be there. Thank you for today, Christian. I'm just going to say goodbye to the people. Thank you for joining me. I want to thank, of course, my guest, Dr. Ron Paul, and also Kyle Mohney of the Human Action Foundation. You can, as I said, check out the archive of this in podcast format on iTunes and Stitcher, or you can check it out at vinarmani.com. We will be back next week, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific time, on Monday. And until then, stay free.